Hi. So this is mostly going to be focused on work specifically on upper back, shoulders and arms, and there'll be some ideas for your hips in there as well, just so we keep things a little bit holistic. I'll be using some toys. If you don't have these and you need them, then please be in touch and we can figure out a way for you to get hold of them. So I would always suggest, if you've got a hard ball like a lacrosse ball, that you do some footwork first off. The usual thing that you'll have done before, generalized massage underfoot, maybe an emphasis on working from the front of your foot toward the back. Probably a minute or so per foot. As usual, if you find a particularly grisly spot, then do take some extra time just to kind of dig into that area. You can also use the ball towards the front of your foot to get in a little bit of calf stretching. So from this position, I can push the front of my foot into the ball, so I work my calf and then ease off that effort and see if I can lean into the stretch. And you can do a few repeats like that. So we'll go for a bit on the other foot. Maybe noticing that one foot is a bit stiffer, stickier than the other one. Possibly contemplating on reasons why that might be if you have the time or the energy. And again, the method around the calf stretch is my knee is straight and I'm leaning forwards into a position where I can feel the stretch in my calf. So I'm doing something a bit weird with this back leg, it's just so it's clearer on the camera. So from here, I'm going to try and push the ball down into the floor with the front of my foot. 7 or 8 seconds like that, and then I'm going to relax that effort and see if I can possibly lean a little bit further. Really what I want to do is to step this foot forwards to give me some balance. So do that. And then I have a new position for my ankle, a new stretch for my calf. And then once again, I'm going to try and press the ball down into the floor. Heel stays rooted, pressing down with the front of my foot so my calf has to work. That's about my 7 or 8 seconds. Ease off that effort, see if you can lean into it a little bit more. And then you can always finish off with, again, coming back to just a bit of generalized rolling around the sole of your foot. Okay. Now, I'm going to use the foam roll. If you don't have a foam roll, you can do something very similar with something like this, which again we can supply, or it could be substituted for a couple of tennis balls in a sock. So, focusing on loosening up your upper back, supporting the weight of your head with your hands, lifting your hips up. So ideally, I've got pretty much one straight line from my hips to my ears, and then you can push and pull with your legs, rolling over the back of your rib cage. Personally, I prefer not to go off the bottom of my ribs, and you can play with the speed at which you do with this. You can also maybe just focus on a particular spot if you recognize that that's where you really need the massage to be. If I lift my hips up a bit higher, then I can get higher up on my back without losing the roll and into something which is actually quite stiff up there. And you can also try shifting your weight. So I'm favoring the right side of my back here, getting some nice massage into the back of that shoulder as well. And the same thing to the other side. And of course, you can take longer on this if it feels valuable to you. And then, having done that sort of more generalized massage, this is where the small balls really come into their own. So the roll is at a particular spot on my back, so it's right underneath one or two joints in my spine, and I'm going to try to get some movement specifically from those joints by supporting the weight of my head with my hands and allowing myself to ease back, not forcing, and then easing forwards again. So I might do a couple of these with the roll in that specific spot, and then shift my position a little bit, and the same thing. I'd encourage you to experiment with your breathing. For me, if I'm breathing out as I go backwards, or maybe breathing out while I'm in this little back bend over the roll, I have more sense of being able to release my spine there. So do experiment with that. And you can keep to this kind of up and down rhythm if that feels good. Or maybe you want to hang out in this little back bend position and just take a few breaths there and see if you can feel that your spine lets go. Again, I'm also getting a bonus bit of stretching through the underneath of my shoulders down into my ribs, which is welcome at the moment. And you can keep going, shifting position until you've run out of room in your spine to be doing that. So once I get up fairly close to the base of my neck, there's not really any further for me to go. Okay, so that's the sort of self-massage part of things. And then something more specific for your neck. So make fists. Press your arms into your side, so you create some tension through your upper chest and the front of your shoulders, which will help you not to start to move your shoulders or your upper back around. And then tuck your chin in, slide your chin along your collarbone towards your shoulder. Now from here, turn your head so your head is tipped to one side, and then you can carry on the circular motion, reaching your head back all the way around towards the other shoulder and back into the middle, and then reverse the direction. Two times each way. Taking enough time that you can feel yourself getting to the outer limit of what your neck will do. And then we're going to move on down to address this bit of your back. Do you need to pass by? Sorry, Anushka just needs to cross over the screen. Okay, so let's go with hands on opposite shoulders. So the movement focus is your breastbone, the center of your breastbone. In this case, firm your legs and your buttock muscles. So I'm trying to keep myself stiff from my waist down. So hand on opposite shoulder, round forwards. I'll do one from the front and then we'll do one from the side. So from this position, I'm going to turn to look towards my little toe. And then when I can't turn anymore, I have to do a bit of a side bend. Now here, I'm already starting to push up with my breastbone toward the ceiling, so I'm not compressing my lower back. tilting to the other side, and then back into this rotation to the front. So I'm going to go the other way, but turning sideways on. I'm trying to keep my head following what's happening below. So ideally, my neck isn't doing its own thing. And the movement is focused again on my upper back, this area in between my shoulder blades. So we'll go for a back view for the last one. Okay, and then moving on to shoulder blades. So there are options here. Let's do, first of all, your hands by your sides. So from this position, my hands stay against the seams of my trousers, my elbows stay straight. Reach your shoulders forwards. Draw them up toward the ceiling, and now try to slide them back behind you and then down toward your waist. So if I do this well, you won't see my head moving. My spine should be still. And then we can reverse the direction. Let's go for a side view. So, shoulders draw back behind me, up toward the ceiling, forwards and down, backwards, up, forwards and down. Now, if the hands by the side version is proving a little bit awkward, then option 2, and you can maybe do both of these if you fancy, make fists, or if you have a broom handle, you can grab the broom handle, elbows locked once again. So you punch forwards, lift your shoulders to the ceiling, draw your shoulders back and down. And then reversing the direction. Okay, and then going for some more rotation in your shoulders, reach your hands apart. One arm turns in, the other turns out, and you do this sort of lazy glance towards the turning out arm. And then switch. And imagine your two arms and your head are somehow connected by cogs. So the movement happens simultaneously. And as you probably heard before, though my hands are moving, my focus is right inside my shoulder joint. So I'm really trying to get my attention there so I can feel that that's really where the bulk of the movement is coming from. If you're feeling saucy, you can also experiment with changing the angle of things. So your hands don't have to be out by your sides necessarily. You can shift your hands through space as you keep doing the turning to give yourself a bit more variability about what's going on with your shoulders. Okay, and then using a band, excuse me, if you don't have a band, you can do it without. You could do it with some kind of strap, piece of fabric, piece of piece of rope or something. Obviously it won't be stretchy, but it'll still give you the resistance. Or again, you can do it with nothing at all and just try to apply the resistance for yourself. So, legs together, which is just going to make you a bit more conscious of how you have to stabilize your midline as you do this. Firm grip on the band or whatever it is that you're using. Reach your hands up. There's no need for tension in my band at the moment. My elbows stay straight, and now there's tension in the band as I move my shoulders through the sticky range of movement. At this point, I'm not concerned about my shoulders lifting towards my ears. That's perfectly permissible. The one thing that I'm going to be a little bit conscious of, if I turn sideways arm, is resisting a movement of my spine. So, if I show you what we're avoiding, so here I'm doing a big bend of my spine, a sort of hinge in the middle, which I'd ideally avoid. So I'll try and do a better version. So you might find, even though this is about mobilizing your shoulders, there is a little bit of work for your abdominal muscles and your buttock muscles to do just to maintain that position. Okay, so we can dispense with the band, and then moving on to all fours. So, index fingers parallel, elbows straight, and I want my back to be initially in what feels like its natural shape, and I'm just going to shift my weight backwards and forwards. So there's a bit of a stretch on my wrists here, and then I'm backing off, back and forth like that. You can experiment with the speed of this, maintaining the shape of your spine all the time, and if you do start to go for a faster movement, then try fixing your gaze on one single spot in front of you. And you can do maybe 10 to 12 rocks backwards and forwards, and then come to what feels like the middle. So my shoulder is over my wrist, my hips should be over my knees, and then initiating the movement from the bottom of your spine, going into a cat stretch. I'll be as precise as I can. So my head is the last thing to move. Whichever shape I'm making, I'm moving from the bottom of my spine up to the top. In this end position here, I want to make sure that I'm keeping my shoulders broad and I'm not collapsed between my shoulders. So there's an element of lifting my chest up and forwards. So we'll go for a couple more like that. It takes a lot of concentration for me to be strict in moving from the bottom of my spine to the top. So don't be surprised if it's the same for you. Okay, and then lower yourself onto your forearms, keeping in mind that in this position you're going to be resisting sagging in between your shoulders. So again, there's this usual Pilates opposition of, as my arms press down, my chest is lifting up to help support that position. So from here, keep your hands pressing into the floor, lift your elbows up, and then as you lift your chest away from the floor, keep drawing your elbows down. So it's like there's a struggle between your elbows and your chest. Now, the chances are this will be fairly easy for you to do, So when you've done a few, if you want to make it a bit more testing, you can start from the bottom, holding onto your ribs with the other hand. So we do a one-arm version. I'm aiming to keep the front of my shoulders parallel to the floor, and again resisting any kind of collapse of my body away from that shoulder. I'll just do a couple on each side for now. Obviously you can add more in if you wish. Another pointer when you're doing that, just to aid in the work for your hand and your forearm, is try to make sure that all the time your hand is down flat on the floor, so you're not lifting your hand like this and leaving a space underneath your index finger or your thumb. Okay, so then staying on all fours but reaching your knees wider apart and bringing your hands closer together. So from the front, the setup is like this. You can point your toes back or you can point your toes out if your ankles have that flexibility. So from this position, lower back relaxed, one hand reaches behind the other to start to pull you in that direction. The other hand pushes into the floor to resist. So you get this lovely wringing out of your spine. I'll go sideways on so you get a different view. So wide knees, shins parallel, lower back relaxed, hands relatively close together. Another pointer, as you reach with one hand, the idea is not to drop onto the floor. It might feel quite nice to do that, but it actually takes away the rotation that we want for your spine. Last one. And as I mentioned, we're not going to ignore your hips altogether. So while we're on all fours, coming back to hands about shoulder width apart, stretch one leg out to the side. Now ideally, this foot will be on the floor. And I'm trying to keep my hips as level as possible. So from this position, I'm going to go back to the rocking back and forth we did earlier. So this is really about getting in this case, my right hip moving a bit more. I had quite a big stretch for the inside of my thigh up into my groin. You can experiment with exactly where your foot is, depending upon how much flexibility you have. So if I can get my foot further forwards, inevitably that's going to be a bit stronger. Also a little bit different. So the same to the other side. Again, I'm mindful of what my back is doing. So I don't want to be going into this movement in some sort of distorted shape of my spine. I want my spine to be in as natural a shape as possible. And then as I rock back and forth, if I turn sideways again, if I can keep my spine in that shape, then the bulk of the movement is really in my hip joint. Okay. And then staying with your hips for a little bit longer. You can do a few simple hinges. So my back should stay in the same line. All the movement occurring around this axis of my hip joints. But then we're going to add a little squat to this. So the pattern goes like this. Small hinge, and then I sit back into the squat, and my arms should travel in line with my spine if I do it well. Arms travel in line with my spine as I straighten my knees, and then I unhinge to come back up again. Excuse me. So it should be 4 movements, distinctly repeating in reverse, if that makes sense. So we do hinge, squat. We come out of the squat, we come out of the hinge. Hinge, sit back into the squat. Keep your chest up. Reach your hands up. Pull your arms back as you straighten your knees, and again I'm back into the hinge position and then out of the hinge. So 2 more times like that. Hinge, sit back into the squat. My knees are reaching apart here. Out of the squat, out of the hinge, and I'll do a couple facing forwards. So, hinge, squat, out of the squat, out of the hinge. Last one. And then just to see how things are feeling, I didn't suggest this at the beginning, but you could always do this first of all and then revisit it at the end. It's a nice, strong stance or upright posture. And then let your head lead the way as you bend forwards towards the floor. My arms are loose, my neck is also relaxed here. And then you push down with your feet to trigger straightening from the bottom of your spine up to the top. And once again. So, I hope that's useful. All feedback is welcome. Do let us know at this time when we're trying to provide things in video form. Do let us know if there's other things that you would like or that you need, other ways that we can help. Thank you for watching.